I don't have.
Oh, hold on, I just realized I didn't have that on, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I mean, for the most part, I think that, there are a few just, kind of typo. We want to update the dates and all that. That's, just kind of standard.
Sorry, just don't forget to unmute your mic.
Okay.
Yeah, I realized that a little too late, but thanks.
In the, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
In the our vision, could we add collaboration with community partners? I know it says partnerships with schools, families, and community, but as a vision to collaborate with all,
Yeah, I think we could absolutely.
all community partners, because I think that community partners have expanded majorly.
So I'd recommend you can kind of put that into the appropriate language, and then we can review before we go live with anything. Thank you, Jim. Any other areas that we'd like to kind of pay attention to?
Is there any recommendations on the salary parameters?
The key one? A key one? Yep, go right ahead, Mr.
I mean, if you look at Worcester Public Schools, they have, I believe, 50-plus schools, and the superintendent makes approximately $240-something thousand, and I'm not stating this exactly right, but when I broke it down to like 8,000 or 9,000 per school, or somewhere in between. So would it make sense to like compare it to what the Boston Public Schools and Worcester Public Schools or Springfield Public Schools principals make and divide it in that way, just so we're not bleeding our resources in salaries for superintendents?
So would it be helpful then to kind of get that information so we could kind of make some comparisons? So if we could include some of the large, I mean, I'd include, like Brockton is always a good comparison point, Lawrence. I don't know if there are any other communities we'd be curious about.
In Springfield, Worcester, Boston.
Yeah, you mentioned Worcester. Was it like they have like 5 high schools, right? Worcester, plus a technical school also.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously a much bigger
yeah.
district. Are they second or third? Springfield the second largest?
I believe Springfield, they don't have 2 though, I
Um,
believe. So Worcester has a lot, so.
Okay. So what I recommend then is that we can have that information pulled together, and then we'd have it available at our next, we can schedule that for the next subcommittee. And at that point, we'd be able to make the final determinations on what the salary range would be. Okay. So my next question was, I don't know if anyone has any kind of proposals for how we kind of, do we want to move forward saying, for the most part, this is going to be our job description? Do we want to kind of set some timelines for when we make decisions around how we move forward? Whether I know that there've been some conversations around, whether we do the search or not. So I don't know if anyone has any recommendations. Mr. Rossi.
I just think we promised the community that we would continue with the search for a permanent superintendent, and whether or not we all have to go through the interview process or not again, I think we owe it to the community to do that.
I think that's fair. I mean, I would be in the same place. I don't know if anyone has any other insights. I know, Mr. Ray,
So I can put my opinion on it, that I was not in favor of doing a search at this time, but as the committee has already decided to move forward with it, I will just go along. But in my opinion, I still not supporting on in spending time searching for the new superintendent at this time. But so I don't have any opinion on it. Thank you.
So I would say nothing's determined by this subcommittee. That, you know, the whole vote would have to take before, we'd have to take the vote with the full committee to make a decision either way, so. Stacy, Ms. Thompson, did you want to comment? Is she muted?
Not at this time.
Oh, okay. No problem. Did you have a problem getting onto the Zoom?
I don't see the link. I don't think I received it.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I received the link.
Okay, well, we can hear you. Hopefully everyone else can. Okay, so then what I'd recommend is that I'd entertain a motion to recommend to the full committee that we move forward to develop a timeline for a full-scale superintendent search. My sense would be, and you can correct me, Ms. Orasi, that we'd be looking to determine the use of a blue ribbon panel as part of that, along with how that would be constructed. I would say what I would like to see happen at the full school committee is that we vote at least on a launch date, that we'd be looking to, kind of have the job description in its final stage and kind of our timeline all written out by, I would think, January, by maybe the second meeting in January. That would get us in that second wave of superintendent searches, which generally happen in that January, February timeframe, right? I'm looking at you.
Well, you heard another one of these meetings, the whole back.
I think that's what we should do, yeah, because I think we need to have the whole committee has to vote on everything, so. So go right ahead.
I'm just realizing what's not in here is also to be able to collaborate with city officials, to be able to efficiently service our buildings overall. And I'd like to see that in there because I think that's extremely important in seeing just what's happened over the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm. You've got that note, Jim? Excellent. Ms. Doherty, yep.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you can see me if I raise my hand.
Yeah, you're a great big head.
I think that it would be very helpful if we could have for the next meeting, a list of not who the people were, but who they represented on the past school committee, so that we have a sense, okay, so we had one person from UTL, one person from LSA, a community member, the Lowell plant, just to get people thinking about somebody from MCC, get
Yep.
people thinking about what does the Blue Ribbon Committee look like in the past? I'm also, when I was looking at the timeline and the materials that are here, they seem very late to me. I think, I would, if we're going to do this search, I'd rather do it sooner. Everybody knows, we're on the same page in terms of looking at what's out there for competition. And I think that we've seen with the staffing shortages across industry, it's not going to be that easy, so the more we can plan in advance in terms of how many people on the committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee, what's a rough timeline and when we want to get started. Maybe we want to post into summer again. It's just something to think about. And then the other thing I wanted to say, I agree completely with the discussion about salary. We want to be looking at what our, sister cities are paying. People that are in, like Ms. Martin, like you mentioned, Brockton, not people that have districts that have similar sizes to us, similar challenges. So that would include some of our cities that are nearby. I think once you go into the Boston market, it's a much higher range. I think that could be the high end of our range. And again, it would be really, commensurate with the experience of the person that, we end up being interested in. So those are just some points that I had.
Okay. Okay, so then what I'd probably recommend is that we plan to reconvene this subcommittee in, say, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but if we gave it 3 weeks, Mr. Hall, would that give you time enough to pull together the salary information, the past blue ribbon panel, how they were populated, maybe for the last 2 searches? Just to give us some different, different ideas. And then this updated job description. And what I would say is, I don't know if we want to, my thought would be that we would pull in MASCC, the Mass Association of School Committees. Glenn Kuchar had kind of gone through this process with us for the last 2 job searches. If we could, tonight, we could take a vote to recommend to the full school committee that we reach out to MASC to see if they have the capacity to take this on. And then Glenn, I think, would really be able to help us set some of these dates, because, certainly he does this all over the state. So I would make that in the form of a motion. Did you get that in the form of a motion, Jim?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Seconded by Ms. Del Rossi. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Great, then we could have that information from Glenn hopefully compiled, so we'd have that at that next meeting in 3 weeks. Hello. All right. Any other questions on this one? Any other things we want to have in our hands for that next meeting that we think would be helpful?
If I could just, I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yep, we can.
I was just curious as to whether or not we had, so the list of whoever you typically reach out to for the Blue Ribbon Committee, are we just compiling what the Blue Ribbon Committee is going to stand for? Because I'm just curious, because there are some new organizations that would not have even been a part of the process prior. And I'm thinking of like a Fortaleza or a Center for Hope and Healing type of organization. And I want to just make sure that they would know about something like that, because I think that they would have great insight since they are working with our youth very directly.
Yeah, absolutely. What we'd be getting at this next meeting, Stacy, is just the list of the last ones for the last 2 searches. But then this committee, the full school committee, gets to decide how we populate it. Because we've done it different ways. Like we've had like standard, like UMass Lowell and Middlesex and whatnot. But we've also, we do parents, so that we make sure we're eliciting parents. I think last time we had done it like an elementary, a middle, and a high school parent. But we can absolutely, if there are specific voices we want to have on it, we can just make that as, take a vote that way. Or if we want to have, I think the last time the superintendent's office had reached out to kind of the nonprofit alliance in Lowell to kind of let everybody know about it, and we asked for like application, letters of interest from anyone who was interested in participating.
Okay.
But I think we can figure that all out and then be able to decide what is best. But I agree. In the last, these last few years, we've seen some new additions to the nonprofit landscape, which would be really helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so that is it for our first topic then, if no one has anything else. Jimmy, you don't need anything else from us on that? Okay. All right, then our next one is, the first is the memo from Ms. Phillips with the proposed job descriptions. I don't know if you want to walk us through that. Yeah, if you want to do it from the table too, whichever you like, whatever you want is fine with me. I think you need to be on this side so you're facing, though it doesn't look like they've got a picture up there. Here you go. He'll run in and tell us if we're wrong.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Yes, thank you. So we are here to discuss 2 job postings that went to the full school committee a few weeks back. Both of these positions were recommended in the spring 2022 audit that the Family Resource Center underwent by the Public Consulting Group. And The first is the McKinney-Vento Liaison for Transportation. This started as a part-time position several years back, and we are recommending a full-time position. Our homeless student population has increased, and students who have been identified for McKinney-Vento have additional transportation flexibilities and opportunities outside of the district's transportation policy. And so that requires someone who's able to, well, first meet with the family, work through their needs, work with the transportation office around whether there are existing routes that families can take, whether there are transportation contracts, whether there are bus passes. And so this has become a lot of work for both the transportation office and the part-time employee. So we are recommending this as a full-time position. And then the second position is the assistant FRC coordinator. In the document that I provided to you of the summary of recommendations, there is a staffing recommendation for several positions. Not all of them were filled. However, the assistant FRC coordinator was recommended so that the coordinator can focus on higher level data oversight, vision setting, strategy, and managing the clerks. And if you look at all of the recommendations here, these recommendations are to be fulfilled primarily by the leadership of the coordinator. And I also shared with you the flow chart of the enrollment process, just to share with you the complexity of the process. On the front page of the flow chart, you see the big process, but there are 7 sub-processes. And so for the last couple years, we have focused just on the operations of just get it done, get them in school. We have not been able to really focus on each of these areas to increase efficiency, to identify training and support for families. So the assistant FRC coordinator would allow us not only to do the get it done piece, but also make sure that we're doing it with a higher level of efficiency, of accuracy. There's more that can be done for families with informing them not only of the process, but of zones, of transportation, of differences at different schools. And right now, we just have the capacity to take your application, place you. Oftentimes, we're dealing with changing assignments because the family comes back because they didn't know they didn't qualify for transportation. So now we're switching assignments, and these are things that if we had someone who could be at a higher strategic level and not just the operations, we'd be able to improve our services for families.
To go back just to the first, so with the McKinney-Vento positions, we're talking about taking the existing part-time and turning it into a full-time, right?
Yes.
Not adding, okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Would the current person in the position be moving into the full-time? I don't know who that is, but.
They would have to apply.
Okay. And then my thought would be with the FRC assistant coordinator. I mean, would you see this person doing that high-level kind of, strategic work, or would you see the actual coordinator doing that, being freed up to do that? Okay.
The actual coordinator.
So that the assistant coordinator would really be doing the direct staff management and.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
And also I want to identify the high school placement piece because there are additional family and student supports that are needed for high school. For K-8, we can place without a transcript. We just take age, birth certificate, those documents. For high school, we actually need to understand more, what you completed back in your home country or a different state. What are your goals? there are times where we have to place students at the adult education center, and it's just requires a lot more counseling with the family, and that person would be able to take that on.
And how would they interact with we still have the actual assignments at the high school too, right? Where the people who are actually registering at the high school are going to the high school to do that?
Well, the first question is, are you eligible to attend the high school? And the eligibility to attend the high school is not just that you live in Lowell. It's also, the transcripts, ensuring you didn't graduate, back in your home country. Once we determine that you are eligible, then the high school has to determine the schedule.
Okay.
So we are handing the student off to the high school once we have gathered the best information around what we believe the student will need.
Mr. Rossi.
I'm kind of backtracking here, but I guess I'm curious to see if in the superintendent packet that you could also include a organizational chart for us to look at currently, and maybe how these positions all fall under each one, just so we have a very clear understanding. I don't know if that's going to be very difficult, or just an organizational chart of all the assistant superintendents and what they control.
Those should exist, right?
I'll add it on.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
So of the ones that we have in front of us, Ms. Phillips, now some of them have already been approved. Is that what happened at the school committee meeting, the September 20th meeting?
That is correct.
I'm just trying to see which ones we have to actually take action on.
The front desk family advocate has been hired, and the bilingual liaison for Spanish and Portuguese, which has been tremendously helpful given our population. We have not hired or put forward. I believe there was a guidance counselor for, again, the high school placement. But if we can do a better job of just screening up front and providing everything the high school needs, we feel they'll be better positioned to place students accurately and quickly.
So then tonight what you'd be looking for us to do is basically to approve the move to a full-time McKinney-Vento liaison and just this assistant coordinator.
Yes, that's
Resource
correct.
Center.
Question.
On those two, yes, Mr. Lay.
Excuse me. All of these positions, are they full benefit, they receive benefit? I know the FRC coordinator is only part-time, but do they receive benefit as well? And so who is doing those jobs at this moment? The task that we have for FRC coordinator, who are doing those jobs right now?
So we have the coordinator here. That's Ms. Abisola Ogunseye. We had a part-time high school, I think, retiree who recently resigned their position. So that piece is still open. So we would roll that into the assistant FRC coordinator.
Mr. Rossi.
I'm just thinking these are real, like, on-the-ground positions that we're definitely going to need to utilize, especially with the unexpected numbers of migrants that we are to be expected and have reserved the ICC Center for. So I personally think it's important to do this because it's a very complex system.
Any other questions, Mr. Lay?
Just a comment that we all talk about preparing for the migrant family coming in, and I feel that we don't know how many and when they will come. just for me, just me personally, I would anything about migrant families. I would want to wait and see who they are, and I mean how many they are before we even. I don't want to make a space for something to happen until I see it happen. And that's my opinion. But I'm not going against this proposal. I just feel that if we have a need for it right now, I support it. But if we have this position, just in case we have no family coming in, I'm not going to support. I will not support that.
Yep, go right ahead.
I should just clarify, I'm sorry. I also think that it would improve the efficiency because we often hear of like unanswered phone calls and so forth, and this would avail at least 2 extra people to be able to direct this situation and to direct staffing needs. Because there are many issues that go through the Family Resource Center that are after hours. You're getting the bus calls. You're getting all of it. I mean, special ed, McKinney, Vento, ELL, SPED, like, you're the epicenter for everything. So, and that's where we hear a lot of parent frustration from. So I just support it because I've heard the frustrations on both sides. There's not enough staff and nobody is answering the phones, So to me, it just makes sense.
And I'd say too, I mean, these are all based on recommendations that happened a year ago, that we wanted to see these increases. So before this, the whatever is happening, at the ICC was even a thought yet. So if nothing else, I think this will at least get us on a more stable footing moving forward. Yes, Ms. Phillips.
I also, you reminded me of the after-hours work that happens, both with Ms. Ogunsheye as well as Dr. Duda, and both of them work whatever is needed. The position is not overtime eligible, and they work evenings, they work weekends, and I do think it's important to try to have a more balanced quality of life. And so I have watched this position, and I'm thankful for the dedication of the 2 coordinators I've worked with, but they have definitely put in hours outside of the business hours in order to make sure that we can place families as quickly as possible.
Well, thank you. Jackie? Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that I don't mean to be like this big disruptor, but I have been paying attention for a while, and I think the staff in the last 4 years, the amount of people at the Family Resource Center has increased. I'm going to tell me what that number is. If you don't, I know I've asked it before, but I don't remember if I ever remember. I know we put a bunch of bilingual parent-based homes in, and I guess my concern, the assistant coordinator level, what is the salary range of that? What does that start at? Do you know that, Dr. Paul?
Ms. Doherty, it says it's to be negotiated with LSA. I would anticipate it would be between 85 and 100 around where a district support specialist is.
Because so a coordinator makes what? I saw it said to be determined. So 85 and 100, a coordinator in LSA is how much?
Anywhere between 105 to 125.
And so, we're talking about bringing somebody in at a high level when I still feel very strongly that the people in the front line answering the phone and responding to parents, if they have the support, the training they need, I don't know that another high-level person is what's needed, but that's just my question that's out there. And when you look at the requirements, or you've got them as qualification skills for that assistant FRC coordinator position, you have to go down to the second to the last bullet before you get experience working in a K-12 school district public agency is preferred. I would think if we're going to bring somebody in at $85,000, that we want somebody who really has experience doing these sort of things? Or how do you have the leadership to help the team that's working with you to provide the services? I mean, this is where I get confused, because I feel like we have put a lot of positions into the FRC. And I know I brought this up at the full meeting last time, and Superintendent Skinner said it's never worked that well. Well, maybe it's never been as good as it should be. But I don't feel like we've seen great improvement with the amount of people we put in the last few years either. So I'm trying to really get to the root of, is it just more people that we need? And I know we referenced the audit that was done, but as I recall, that audit was very last minute. A very limited sample of parents were actually contributed to the audit, and they were all parents that came after the standard registration period because it was done so late in the year. So I had some reservations even about the recommendations, although I think that definitely looking at having those frontline people who have the support and the training to provide the services to families is critical. Again, I go back to, is it really an assistant FRC coordinator level that we need? And certainly with the McKinney-Vento, we're looking at our numbers of homeless students increasing. We need to provide wraparound services for those students. I don't have an issue with that. I think that previously, wasn't it part of the coordinator's job? Wasn't that our McKinney-Vento representative? Was it part of Dr. Duda's job responsibilities? Does someone know?
That is not a position. It is, it has been a stipended add-on to other positions. So when Dr. Duda took on the role maybe 2 years ago, it was because we needed a 12-month person to support the year-round placement of students. So it was not a part of the FRC until 2 years ago.
McKinney-Vento?
McKinney-Vento. It was housed there, but reporting to a different staff person.
I believe that was through Student Support Services, correct? Yes. So when that got blown up, that's when it shifted to. I don't know if you can hear me, Jackie.
No, I heard. No, I hear you, and I can see that makes sense. And I think that we should be moving forward to provide those support. But I guess I'm still on the fence about this whole assistant coordinator position, especially when, like I said, the second to the last bullet is experience working with K-12 school districts. Preferred. If we're going to bring somebody in at $85,000, we need somebody that's got the experience and the background in this work. Or it just, I mean, that's all.
If we're correlating this, I'm sorry, thank you, Jackie. So if we're correlating this to a district support specialist, is that what you're?
That was my initial thought, or the assistant director of HR makes approximately 85 to 95 is.
Well, I mean, I think the district support is more in line with it.
Right.
How, is there a experience requirement in those qualifications for those positions? Like 5 years of experience in a district, or?
Generally it is.
I don't know if you know that.
District support is a school year position. The Family Resource Center Coordinator is a 12-month position. I believe it's one of the only, if not the only, 12-month LSAA position. So when we compare salaries, it's important to also recognize that the salary for the FRC coordinator is 12 months, but time off within the 12 months. But it's not a school year position.
It's what, the
226, I believe. The safety coordinator has the same work year.
I mean, I'd say what I what I'm trying to find an equal level to is in terms of the qualifications as opposed to the salary. That, I mean, I think an experience requirement makes sense in this position. So if we could kind of check and see if that's a 5-year, or I'm assuming it's like 3 to 5, something like that. Yes, Ms. Phillips.
I also wanted to mention that it really requires strong operations, and so you can manage large operations, say, out of school time, very complex. Some nonprofits, very complex. High school
public agency?
registrar, complex.
That's why that's in here.
Right,
already.
right.
Okay. So it includes both the option of a school district or a public agency. So I think that would cover kind of both areas. Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
Delta hired Tom Brady for these reasons. Can we see if he's looking?
I
Bring the team together.
Any other questions, concerns?
I think I'm kind of aligned with Ms. Doherty's concern that for somebody coming in with this high pay, I do want to see a little stronger requirement. I'm not. I keep on thinking that 85 minimum is a high salary. So I think this is one of the positions that I maybe didn't vote for. I think. So I will maintain that the looking at the qualification requirement and the salary, I don't feel that they match. I want to see somebody with more experience and more requirement, and a bachelor degree is nice, but I feel that in education a bachelor degree, 85,000 a year is a little high. That's how I feel.
So would you, because again, all we can do tonight is kind of recommend this to the full committee to then vote on at our next meeting. If I'd make a motion to add at least a 5-year experience requirement to this. I don't know if that, again, you don't need to vote on it now. We'll be voting it as a full committee.
5 years in educational organization.
Working in either a K-12 school district or public agency is preferred, and it's preferred, so. Yes, Ms. Phillips.
I want to mention that it's an operations position, and so when it requires a bachelor's degree, it's because we're really looking at someone who has run operations in a nonprofit, in a higher ed, in the district. It's the assistant to the Family Resource Center coordinator. So it is different from the education-related LSAA positions. And so the education requirements, for example, for a district support specialist are very different. It's a school year position. I think it's really important when we talk salaries to also remember that this position does span additional work days. So we can't compare, a school year position of, say, $90,000 to a 12-month position of $90,000. We just have to keep that in mind. And then also, again, this is an operations position, so we want to see what you have been able to do and manage before, rather than, what was your master's degree in as relates to the operations.
Can I follow
For a
up?
master's degree, though, right?
Can I follow up with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. So, Ms. Phillips, if we put it as a master's degree requirement, would that put us in in a position that we cannot find anybody that's qualified, or somebody who wants to do the job? Is that why you want to put a bachelor's degree required rather than a master's degree?
Oh, no, I'm saying I would not want to put the master's degree, and the coordinator position requires a bachelor's. So the assistant coordinator would, is aligned with that expectation of a bachelor's, which is the same for the coordinator. I believe we have some other operations positions in the district. I do believe many of them are bachelor's degree, but maybe Dr. Hall can say differently, but it really is around what operations have you been able to manage in your work successfully.
If I can add this, Chairperson?
Yep, go right ahead.
So, just to speak to that point from the HR perspective, you don't want to necessarily add the master's degree, because then you are basically taking people out of contention that have a bachelor's degree and have 10, 15 years experience working in that. And I can speak to that from lived experience. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I was wondering if, towards Ms. Doherty's point about kind of equipping the frontline people, I'm wondering if this particular person conducts or facilitates professional development to increase their knowledge base. I don't know if that's part of the job description.
So, Ms. Ogunsheye is the one responsible for the Family Resource Center, but the weight of the operations don't allow her to be able to do a lot of the other data quality training. If you look at the enrollment process, it's not just who's in the Family Resource Center. This process goes to the special education office, it goes to the English learner office, it goes to the McKinney-Vento office, to the high school, to the health department, and those are a lot of processes to ensure it's being efficient across the board. And so the assistant director or the assistant coordinator would be able to get applications to the finish line. The FRC coordinator would be able to do more strategic work of seeing, are there any gaps? When students are going up to be tested in the English learner department, are we efficiently scheduling them? Are we, counseling them on, in families on placement and programs? We don't have the time to do that right now, because it's just application came in, check document, let's give them a seat.
I mean,
So to that point, I'm wondering if that we could, in thinking about these positions, if we could have a person who is willing to assess the need and then potentially send it, not maybe conduct the professional development themselves, but send to the appropriate department a needs assessment for professional development in the area that they're noticing based on their gaps. So that was just a thought.
I mean, I think one of the key things, and it's something you've spoken of, Ms. Phillips, but it's not reflected in the job description. Everything I think we're talking about in terms of professional development and all that kind of activity really all gets wrapped up in their direct supervisory responsibility for the clerks in the FRC. So that's something that you articulated tonight, but there's no supervisory experience or supervisory responsibility listed in the performance responsibilities. And I don't see it as one of our qualifications, experience in managing frontline staff or something like that. I mean, again, it's reflective of, our job descriptions are all over the map, but yes, Mr. Lang.
Madam Chair, thank you. Just want to follow up with the conversation earlier about RFC coordinator. So RFC coordinator, it surprised me that all we need is just a bachelor degree. I thought we had someone has a higher degree than a bachelor as RFC coordinator. And I believe the previous OFC coordinator had even had a PhD, right? Am I wrong? Yeah. So I'm surprised about that. That the OFC coordinator is only required to have a bachelor degree. So I'm stuck with reluctant to agree with this position with this requirement. And Ms. Connie, Ms. Martin, you mentioned about 5 years experience. I support that. We do want somebody who has been working for a while and has shown leadership. So I agree with that.
So what I'd recommend, and I'd put this before the subcommittee, this obviously needs to go before the full committee at the next meeting. What I think the subcommittee would like to see reflected in a revised job description would be, and please correct me as I go through these, one would be a minimum of professional experience. I think 5 years is appropriate. If anyone has any other opinions, let me know that. I would also say that we need to include in this a reference to the supervisory experience and include that both in the qualifications as well as in the actual performance responsibilities so that that's more clearly articulated what we'd be looking for in terms of, managing staff, providing training, all the different aspects that we see this person kind of taking on as we move forward. And then I would also ask to take a look at that salary and make a recommendation that you can kind of justify within the LSAA structure so that we can kind of see something that's equitable in terms of understanding the difference between the work year and the educational and whatnot responsibilities. Those are the ones that are in my head. Does anyone else have anything else we'd want to see changed in the new job description before it comes back to the full committee? Ms. Doherty, I don't know. Yep, Ms. Doherty.
I just want to say, thank you. I just want to say, I think that the job description is so important that we be very clear about the responsibilities, even the qualifications for the people we're seeking, because that's where we're really held to the line, to hire the most qualified people. And I'm thinking about if you go to your next job description that you'll be discussing, is the executive secretary for the office of the chief schools officer, grade 7. Under qualifications, it says very clearly 5 years of full-time experience in an office environment. That's for an executive secretary. So it seems to me when we're looking at creating these administrative positions that are going to be so important to the success of the FRC in this instance, we want to at least have that level of clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. If there aren't any other recommendations, what I'd say is that we've offered our suggestions and recommend that the positions be brought back at our next full school committee meeting for the full committee to take action. Do you guys have everything you need to kind of do that? Okay, perfect. I'm sorry. Does that need to be a motion as opposed to a recommendation?
I think I have the intent of the
Okay.
subcommittee to make those changes and we can go to the next meeting.
Perfect. Okay, yep, so we're moving on to the final one here is the executive secretary for chief school officer and licensure. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to support this, but we can certainly go through and discuss it. Just to be clear, we've had a number of conversations about how this committee would like to see some of the central office restructured. We've put things kind of on hold so that we can kind of get through this year and give the superintendent and his staff an opportunity to kind of see what's working and what's not. But I don't feel we're in a position to create a new clerical position for a department that may or may not exist. So that was my original take on it. Ms. Del Rossi.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Mr. Skinner, when he was in this position, executive secretary, didn't, as office, chief schools officer and licensure, didn't he have an executive secretary, and where is she?
That's supported the Office of Curriculum Share with Ms. Desmond. So this licensure aspect was added on, I think, when the superintendent and Ms. Crocker-Overidge proposed this. They know that there may not be 24 hours a day that will fill up this position. That's why it seemed that assisting candidates, the 80 to 100 that we have with emergency licenses, piloting them through and assisting and getting a license would be a good additional duty. I think the Office of Chief Schools wanted a person to be host HR where they be managed, however, be accessible when a project was needed by the Office of the Chief Schools Officer.
Yes, Mr. Lake.
Just to clarify, this is not Minerva's old position, right? This is completely different. Because Minerva's old position is already been filled, and that's okay.
Executive Secretary position for the Chief Schools Officer.
Chief school, okay.
I mean, I think, again, the chief of schools position, has very specific duties, and they're not HR duties. You know what I mean? So it doesn't make sense to me that this person, we're adding on a person who's going to be offering some admin support to one office, but doing licensure support for another office. So it just, I don't find it to be compelling. Yes, anyone else, Mr. Lay?
I agree.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else had any other concerns. Yep, Ms. Doherty?
Okay, so I just want to add this point. I'm not particularly in favor of this particular position, but as we found out last week, we have over 100 people serving in positions that they're not, and I know Dr. Hall was saying the emergency licensure is acceptable. They have not met the full requirements meant to be a temporary licensure. We have to have a system in place to move these people through the process. Just because the numbers are getting so overwhelming. And I think it matters. I think it matters if you go through the process, you get the end out, you pass, you get your education, all that stuff matters. That certification matters. I'm not saying this is the answer, but I do think it's important that we recognize at this point we have over 100 people providing services under emergency or probation or whatever you want to call it, but not the full certification. I think that is a problem.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I mean, if that position came before us, we could certainly consider it as part of an HR function. But this is just, it feels like we're kind of Frankensteining together something that they aren't necessarily complementary experience sets. Someone who's been a strong executive administrative, in an executive administrative position doesn't necessarily have any kind of HR experience or background, may not necessarily have any school understanding or of the education process or anything. So it's like we're just kind of jamming together different tasks and experiences and expecting someone to kind of come in and be able to do all those things. I just don't think that that's a reasonable thing. But I will say to Ms. Doherty's point, I absolutely think we need to strengthen what's happening in our HR office to ensure that we're getting people through the licensure process in a legit way. So any other? What I'd say then with this position is that, again, it will go before the full committee because it's been presented to the subcommittee, and that the subcommittee will present it as part of our report, and then the full committee will be charged with taking action on it at that point. Does that make sense? You can try. You can try. Yep, you can. I mean, I think we'd certainly consider, but so. Yeah,
follow
yeah,
the
yeah.
process.
I think that would, if you wanted to make a, an additional recommendation prior to that meeting, we could certainly consider it before the full body votes, if that makes sense. Would anyone else like to notice what time it is?
7:58,
And what time do we have to be out of here?
8 o'clock.
8:00.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Del Rossi, seconded by Mr. Lay. All those in favor say aye. Approved. Thank you all very, very much. I